Okay, let's get underway and welcome to our continuing webinar series offered by Impact, the Fall 2022 series. And today the topic is recovery. I'm Kevin Hilton, the CEO of Impact, and today we have Dana Piscopo. She's a sobriety coach and the founder of Color Your Life. Impact participates in the Construction Industry Institute, and I had the good fortune of having the opportunity to involve Impact personnel in the person of Bert Royer, the Canadian Impact Regional Director, and a research team that studies sobriety and suicide prevention. And had the good fortune of meeting Dave Bullard of Oracle at a board meeting, and Dave said, "You've got to get in touch with Dana Piscopo, and you'll see as Dana rolls out her presentation, our goals are in line with each other." And, the interesting thing is there are very many ironworker local unions and their accompanying contractors that participate in recovery meetings on a regular basis. We'd like to see it just explode. There are people out there that definitely need the help. But before I turn it over to Dana, I just want to remind everybody that we only monitor the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We don't monitor the chat. So if you have a question, we'll get to all the questions, but we want to make sure that you enter them properly in the Q&A box. The slides that Dana is going to present here in her 30-minute presentation or so will be uploaded to the Impact website along with this video later on today or at the latest early tomorrow morning. And like I said, Dana will present for about 30 minutes or so, and then we'll have Q&A and we'll get to all the questions. If for some reason you have a question after the fact or we don't get to your question, if you identify yourself, we'll reach out to you directly and hear it. So, and get that answered. Before I turn it over to Dana, I have to throw out an enticement that the registration will soon be live for the Impact Annual Conference, scheduled for February 12th through the 15th in New Orleans, Louisiana. The 12th will be the best Super Bowl party you've ever been to. You'll be with your favorite contractors and iron workers there in New Orleans. And then the 14th, you'll be with all your sweethearts, which is St. Valentine's Day. And we expect just a phenomenal event attended by the leadership of the construction industry. So with that, let me throw this question out to Dana. Why did you pursue this tact in your
life? I didn't catch that one last bit, Kevin.
I just said, Dana, why did you opt to pursue this tact in your life?
It all comes from my recovery. I would not have been on this path had it not been for my recovery. And you'll hear that more in my story once I get into the meat of that, which I'll be happy to do in just a few slides. So thank you, Kevin, for inviting me to speak on this most important topic, the recovery and peer support in the workplace. I love that I'm speaking to the organization of Impact. That is the word that I chose for 2022, and that was for me to make an impact, whether that's in one person's life or in many. I just want to make an impact in the recovery space. So before I introduce myself, I have a question for all of you, and that is, how are you? I want you to think of how you answer this question when you are asked at the grocery store, in the line at the movies, from your coworkers. What is your quick knee-jerk answer to that question? And hold that thought until the end. So as Kevin mentioned, my name is Dana Piscopo. I am a sobriety and recovery life strategy coach, as well as a director for the Americas Sales Operations team for the Construction and Engineering Global Business Unit here at Oracle. I have been a health and wellness coach since 2018 and received my certifications in sobriety, recovery, and addiction awareness in 2021. And I have been with Oracle for just shy of 20 years at this point. And in today's presentation, I will be talking about my story of addiction and my road to recovery. I will be sharing what I'm doing with my recovery in the workspace and some statistics on recovery and suicide in the construction industry. I will also have a small activity that you can also think about when you have a few minutes to give it some attention. But right now, I would like to open by telling a quick mindset story to get us prepared. So once upon a time, there was a woman who had been lost in the desert for 3 whole days without water. Just as she was about to collapse, she saw what appeared to be a lake just a few hundred yards in front of her. Could it be, or is this just a mirage? She thought to herself. With the last bit of strength she could muster, she staggered towards the lake and quickly learned that her prayers had been answered. It was no mirage. It was indeed a large lake full of fresh water. There was more water there than she could ever drink in a lifetime. And yet, while she was literally dying of thirst, I apologize about that, everybody. I've been having some issues with Zoom, so I'm going to keep my camera off. So I hope that helps with the resources here. So, what part of the
She had just discovered the lake, and it was filled with more water than she could possibly drink in a lifetime.
Got it. So there was a passerby riding on a camel from a nearby desert town who was watching the woman's bizarre behavior. He got off his camel, walked up to the thirsty woman and asked, "Why don't you have a drink, ma'am?" And she looked up at the man with an exhausted, distraught expression across her face and tears welling up in her eyes. "I am dying of thirst," she said, "but there is just way too much water here in this lake to drink. No matter what I do, I can't possibly finish this all." The passerby smiled, bent down, scooped up some water with his hands and lifted it to the woman's mouth and said, "Ma'am, your opportunity right now and as you move forward throughout the rest of your life is to understand that you don't have to drink the whole lake to quench your thirst. Just one small sip, and then another if you choose. Focus only on the mouthful in front of you, and the anxiety, fear, and overwhelm about the rest will gradually fade." So when we look at this story, the moral of this story is when you start out solving a problem, the sheer size of it might overwhelm you. Just keep in mind that to successfully solve it, you need to make the first step. And after that, the next step, and so on until you are done. I love that story because it really does put us in a great mindset to know that we do not have to tackle our recovery all in one day, right? If we do it step by step, piece by piece, and we get to that end game. So the next story I am going to tell is my story. My story starts about 12 years ago now. In 2010, 2011, I was in the dating scene as I had gotten divorced in 2008, ironically from a construction worker who had a severe substance use disorder. But in 2010, I had a double breakup. I was breaking up with somebody in my personal life and then also in my professional life. And they were both pretty abusive relationships. I had no boundaries. I had lost myself to both of them. I didn't know how to say no. And it really, really just made me spiral downward. And I started to pick up drinking. I started on that spiral downward, and it was like, the harsh dating scene, at least to me, a new job. And, I just thought maybe numbing myself will be better. Like, I don't have to deal with any of these problems. I just want to be this happy-go-lucky person who's always partying and not have a care in the world. Well, that just doesn't work out for most of us. I also plan to move to Key West, excuse me, to disappear into that lifestyle. As you might all know, Key West is huge on drinking and basically just a drunken mess all day, every day. And I thought, what a great place to disappear. I got my job approved to move. I sold my car, cut my lease short, and then 3 months later, I met my now husband. We got married in 2016. He brought along with him 3 lovely bonus children for me. And all of this combined really upped my drinking. I was drinking almost on a daily basis at this point, and it was getting more and more. Enter the pandemic, and my drinking just went out of control. So if you can picture somebody who's about 120 pounds, drinking 9.5% alcohol beer, that was my beer of choice, and I was drinking upwards of 4 a day, about a case a week, and even more on the weekends when I would go out. This picture here that you're seeing on the screen was March 1st of 2020. I'm about 7 beers in on this picture. I do not remember it being taken. I don't remember the rest of that evening or pretty much the next morning. It was pretty brutal, the amount of alcohol I had to drink in a 12 or 14 hour period. That was not my rock bottom. Rock bottoms, you know, they're all relative, right? They're not all, you know, sitting homeless with a beer can or a beer bottle in a brown paper bag. It's not, you know, getting overdosing with a needle in your arm or those types of things. It's all relative and unique to that specific person. And my rock bottom, it was a chicken cheesesteak. I know this sounds completely ridiculous to most people, and I have to agree with you. But what you also have to realize about me is that I'm also a master vegan lifestyle coach and educator. So with this, I just murdered a chicken or 2 and rip out my heart. And so once I realized the next day what I had done, because I don't remember eating this chicken cheesesteak, I thought to myself, what on earth could I possibly do? You know, who am I going to injure? Who am I going to hurt? Am I going to end up in jail? It wasn't the driving drunk, not knowing how I ended up in my driveway, not remembering the conversations with my husband or kids. At this point, I was blacking out 3 to 4 times a week. So I wasn't remembering much on a weekly basis. And, you know, it wasn't the thought that I could seriously injure somebody. It was this darn chicken cheesesteak. And I am thankful to that chicken cheesesteak every day. And I am thankful to those 2 chickens as well, because it means every day since then I have been in recovery. It means if it wasn't for that, I'd still be drinking, and it wouldn't be pretty. I know for damn sure I wouldn't be on this path to support others in their adventures in life, and I wouldn't have the promotions I've had in the past year at work, and I certainly would not still be married. And, you know, God forbid, I might have landed myself in jail. So what happens when you hit that rock bottom, when you feel like life is spiraling out of control? For me, I made what seemed like an impossible decision, one that I had made several times a year for several years, and it was a decision that never stuck, and that decision was to quit drinking. I am not in AA. I do recommend that program. I recommend any program that can help support you in your sobriety and recovery, because to me, they are 2 very different things. Sobriety to me is that white knuckling, the dry drunk, trying to get your way through every day, thinking about drinking all the time. And you know, you're trying to make that choice every day not to drink. And for me, recovery is sobriety. However, it's moving through all those tough things that we numbed out while we are in our addiction. We're working through our emotions. We're creating a new lifestyle free of addiction and substance abuse, and it's filled with purpose. And, you know, support, and more support. My support was finding my coaching certification program. It's where I felt most comfortable. Already being a coach and knowing I would learn so very much, both in mental aspects as well as the physical and neurological. I learned so much about the brain. It was crazy. And this is what I needed myself to get into recovery. So get as much support as you can muster. Friends, family, coworkers. My husband was and still is my rock. I didn't tell the kids for about 3 months because I wanted to make sure it was going to stick. I already knew that this time was different, but I really, really needed to know in my heart as well before I brought them into this story. My closest friends were a huge support, and they still are. And transparently, I had lost quite a few friends as well. Friends that thought that I was going to judge them, probably, and friends that maybe just couldn't take looking inward with their own challenges with alcohol. But you know what? It's okay. It really is okay. You need to do you, and you need to focus on yourself. It took me about a week or so to get through the withdrawal. Once you've gone through that withdrawal period, anywhere from 7 to 10 days without immediate relief physically, there's another 20 plus days or so to have that alcohol totally released from your system. This is where you start peeling back the layers. This is where the work begins. It's going to be hard, it's going to be tearful, and it's going to be full of anger. It's also going to be full of joy and love and self-awareness. This is where you begin to feel again, and you start feeling everything. And this is where the connections start to reemerge as well. And I was able to do all this while going through my certification program, thankfully. And I don't think any of us in recovery ever really stop peeling back those layers. We learn more about ourselves. It's a lifelong process. And this is where you start to love yourself again if you lost it, or maybe for the first time. So, reclaiming my Moxie. As of today, I am 759 days sober and in recovery. And I cherish every single one of those days, whether it is a good one or a challenging one. I am sober and I am clear and able to make the right decisions. And I realized that I had to reclaim my Moxie, and I have always loved that word, Moxie. And in the dictionary, Moxie says it's a force of character, determination, or nerve. And the quote that they put in there is, when you've got Moxie, you need the clothes to match. So think of it as a very colorful, passionate word and what you're trying to bring out of yourself while you get yourself into recovery. So Moxie to me is, it's that person deep inside, that one where you were a kid, you know, free to imagine you could be anything you wanted when you grew up. Somewhere along the way, some of us lose that free spirit. Some of us didn't even know we really had it. And it gets buried amongst the daily adulting, the bills, the job, the hobbies, the kids, and the relationships. But man, you know, when you reclaim it, it is a whole new light turned on inside, and it is freaking amazing. And this is what I want the world to feel. This is what it's all about, to live, to understand, and this is who we all need to be. And this is why. The statistics. Excuse me. Employees of the construction industry have nearly twice the rate of substance abuse as the national average. Approximately 15% of all construction workers in the United States have a substance abuse disorder. That's compared to 8.6% of the general population of adults, according to the data from the National Survey on Drug Use. And that was conducted by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration. I'm not going to read word for word everything on these slides, as I know that you'll be getting them after this webinar. But they are literally sobering statistics when you look at these from just a construction industry point of view. The construction industry has been particularly affected by the opioid epidemic, and workers in this field are among the most susceptible to opioid abuse. About 1.3% of construction workers have had an opioid use disorder, almost twice the national average, according to a report from the National Safety Council. And, you know, it doesn't help that so many in construction are prescribed opioids to deal with their pain. Almost 3 out of 4 injured construction workers were prescribed a narcotic painkiller in 2016. Opioids account for 20% of the total spending on prescription drugs in the construction industry. It's a higher amount than any other industry. That should scare everybody. The rampant opioid abuse and addiction within the construction industry is associated with an increased risk of overdose and death. And in fact, construction workers have the highest mortality rates for drug overdose deaths and prescription opioid-related overdose deaths, according to the CDC. The other thing that I quickly want to touch on is suicide in the construction industry as well. This has become forefront in the past several years because the numbers are so astonishing and not in a good way. Construction workers are 4 times higher than the general population to die by suicide. It is high on the list for everybody when we're talking about mental health and well-being in the construction industry. So what's the answer? Well, my answer right now is the peer-to-peer support. And I know Kevin had mentioned about recovery meetings in some of the local chapters, which is fantastic. And I think we need them in all of the local chapters. And while my peer-to-peer support isn't an actual like recovery meeting, it is where people can go to feel safe and to talk. It may not be the be-all end-all answer for sure, but what I have found is that when we have advocates and a support system in the workplace or on the job site, we are all better for it. And those in need have a safe space to talk to those that understand them, and those that listen have a huge responsibility in holding that safe space for folks in need. Before I get into my program, this is the framework I have for my coaching clients, and I modify this a bit when I'm doing my workshops. So my framework is Moxie. It's measure where you are now with life and goal setting and evaluate the how and why you are in the space. We optimize your priorities and we choose your top 3 to start so we can create the X Factor plan to reclaim your Moxie and see where you want to take it. We then implement tools and techniques for success to understand that you are your own knight in shining armor. I will say that again. You are your own knight in shining armor. Nobody's coming to save you. You must do this yourself. We are all here to help you, but you have to be that knight in shining armor. Once you know this and understand this, we execute the Moxie, and the light shines from within, and you are ready to take off on your new life's adventure. So the programs that I have brought to Oracle are 2. The first one is Reclaim Your Moxie, and the second one is called SAFE, and that stands for Sobriety Awareness for Everyone. These are my answers right now to the challenges we are facing, my coworkers and myself in the workplace, in the corporate workplace. The Reclaim Your Moxie is a weekly 1-hour session. I usually have a monthly theme, and we break it out into weekly sessions and activities. And I usually have anywhere from 15 to 20 participants now on a weekly basis. And in our Slack group, we have over 225 people who interact with one another on a daily basis. This group continues to grow from various places within the company on a global basis at this point. Some of the monthly overall themes that we do are boundaries. I just did a workshop on boundaries. This October, we're going to do a new set of activities and revisit our boundaries for the month. We look at feelings and emotions and affirmations, defense mechanisms, and addiction awareness. Ironically, the affirmations was one of the ones that was the most popular. That was last October that we did that, and every day I have been putting an affirmation into our Slack channel, and people eat it up. That session, that whole month was just amazing to me that people locked in on that so much. The other group is SAFE, as I stated. We currently, it's a safe space where folks can come out or come without stigma and shame, and they can get the advice and give advice and listen. They receive resources, and they have a community that understands them. So support Not stigma or shame is needed to help reclaim the Moxie and get people back on track to be their best selves. And having open discussions with such difficult content is needed now more than ever. So a few questions here. Are you ready to make a change for the better? Are you ready to fight the stigma? Are you ready to support and to offer support? Because if you are in the right space. So that activity I talked about in the very beginning is here, and it is the toolbox. How many of you are surprised that it's called the toolbox? To me, this is one of the most important things to start building once you are on your journey to sobriety and recovery. When you think about a toolbox, do you think of old rusty tools or new and shiny tools? Do you think of them as separate or working together? And once you realize what tools you will need to keep your sobriety on the forefront and yourself in recovery, do you think that is the last thing you will need to do with the toolbox? If you answered no, you are correct. Tools do get old, they get dull, they get rusty, and they can break. And the same is true for tools that you use for your recovery. You need to revisit them once in a while to ensure that they still are the right tools for you and your journey. So this is the way I have folks start to fill their toolbox. It's to understand their anxieties and fears. You know, what do they look like? How do they feel? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad are they? What tools do you have now that you can use to work through them? And what tools do you think that you need? So this is what you can do on your own time when you have some quiet time to really think about things that you would like to work on. And some of those tools are coping skills. And these are some of the types of coping skills. They're self-soothing, which I know sounds fluffy, but it really isn't. Distraction, opposite action, mindfulness, emotional awareness, and crisis plan is very important. I've talked with a lot of folks about using their 5 senses, and that is that self-soothing. If you're in a panic or anxiety state, you may not be thinking clearly, and you are worried about the past or the future, but you are certainly not in the present at that time. So take some time to look around you. What do you see? What are you smelling? What can you touch? Is there something you can taste? And what sounds are you hearing? If you're focused solely on the present, the distraction may be just enough to pull you back into the present to carry on with your task at hand. That's what these coping skills are good for. It's to pull you back out of that anxiety and back out of that fear so you can take a step back, take a breath, and really understand what it is that's happening in the moment and get yourself out of it and to move forward. The crisis plan is so important. Make sure you have one, family, friends, a therapist, or a psychiatrist if you need one. Do you have that 988 or other hotline number handy? The other picture on this slide is the movie reel, and this one is my biggest tool in my toolbox. I play this movie reel when I have a craving or when I think a beer is a good idea, because my one beer always turns to 4. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but as I told you, I'm rather small, so those 9.5% beers can get to you rather quickly. The first one's always the best, right? Calms your nerves, calms your soul, gets you down, brings you down a level after a long day. But we always know that that one is never enough. And before I know it, that one will turn into an evening I don't remember. It turns into an anxiety and night sweats at 3 a.m. And then it turns into the shakes at 5 a.m. when I need to get out of bed. And I don't ever need or want to experience that again. So if I ever have a craving, I pull this tool out of my toolbox. So take a moment now or later when you have a quiet moment and think about your toolbox. Is it one that needs replacing altogether, or is just a little sprucing up and wipe the dust off? And how are the tools in your toolbox? Do they need replacing or new ones that are added? The other thing to really think about too, and I forget what it's called and I apologize, is that toolbox that everybody shares on the job site at the end of the day, where everybody puts their individual tools into the big toolbox. You don't want other tools that are rusty, that are old, that are broken, you know, mingling in with your tools that are so strong. So understand from that metaphor that, you know, things that are happening on the job site within your coworkers, it affects everybody. And so if you have those safe places and a support group, it makes it a stronger workplace for everybody. So I want to tell two quick stories. I think we have enough time. About one, Rachel's story is from the SAFE group. She was new to Oracle. She found our SAFE group and was really excited to see that there was a community for folks in recovery. She herself had been in recovery for 2 years when she started Oracle, and she wanted to know how others talked about sobriety and recovery to their coworkers, and whether people even did that. So she asked the questions: did we talk about it? How did we go about it? And she wanted to be an advocate, actually, for her new team. So almost everyone in this group responded to her. It was amazing. This group is new and still growing, so there's some engagement, but not like in the Reclaim Your Moxie. So when I saw the outpouring of answers to this woman, my heart was just so warmed, because that's what it's all about. She was beside herself with joy with all of the answers, and you know, whether folks chose to share their recovery at work or not, she had a well-rounded view of other people's experiences. And she took that as a decision that she was going to take her sobriety and her recovery to her teammates and her management team, to let them know that she was an advocate and a point of contact for folks who were struggling at work. The other quick story I wanted to tell is Kyle's story. Kyle is in our Reclaim Your Moxie group, and he felt safe enough one day to bring up in one of the sessions that his daughter was being bullied at school and in the neighborhood. And as a father, he didn't know what to do for his daughter. People in the group held the space for him and helped him explore different avenues on how he could help as a parent. I know these sound, you know, these are the types of things that we all deal with on a daily basis in our personal lives, right? And this stuff comes with us to work. And as in the construction industry, I know there's a lot of people that, you know, leave it in their car when they go on the job site, and it's never really left there. And that's the biggest issue. So if you have a place to talk about these things, that's how we get along and move forward through these mental issues and challenges that we have. After the session was over, I found out that one of the other members of Reclaim Your Moxie reached out to Kyle and gave his perspective of being bullied in high school and at one of his workplaces, not here at Oracle, but a previous one. And his perspective alone gave comfort in how Kyle could help his daughter. And this right here, this is what I'm talking about. This is the true peer-to-peer support that is happening because of Reclaim Your Moxie. And this is why I do what I do. So the takeaways, right? We always have a takeaway. And remember when I asked, how are you, at the beginning of the presentation? Now think about, what were some of your answers? Because this is an important learning takeaway. If you ask this question, you must be prepared for an answer other than okay, fine, or great. And you must be prepared to hold space for that person if they need it. It may be something that you are not qualified to answer or comfortable to hear, but at least help them find the correct resources if they are struggling. And that brings me to go there. If you see someone struggling or backing away from things at work, go there. Ask them how they are. Ask the what and the how questions to give them support. Most people just need someone to listen, and be that trusted person for them. Also, make yourself aware of signs to be able to identify them in yourself or someone who may be struggling with suicidal thoughts or addiction. You know, we need to look at the consistent depression or sadness, talking about feeling trapped or wanting to die, mood swings, alcohol or drug use increasing, lack of self-confidence, hopelessness or helplessness. too much or too little sleep, anxiety, and restlessness. There's also some warning signs specific to construction workers that we really need to make sure that we're aware of as well, and that's lack of productivity, increased conflict between coworkers, lots of accidents and injuries, lack of problem solving, and tardiness or missing work. So don't stop at the knowledge of these signs. Be on the lookout and in the workplace and on the job site, and look for them in those around you, and make sure to be aware of the signs and point people in the right direction, or talk to someone who can help, and know what you can do to get the suicide rate down and the substance abuse rate down today. I can't stress enough is that 988 number. That is huge, and there has been a 45% increase of calls since that has been launched in July. So I am on to closing questions. Kevin?
Dana, that was, thank you very much for that comprehensive presentation, and it makes me so proud. You know, I work I'm not an iron worker. I work very closely with the iron workers at all levels and their contractors, and the level of commitment you see across the United States and Canada of addressing the addiction issues and the suicide issues is very real. We don't have a meeting unless we bring this up. So there aren't questions, but we'll record this webinar, and I can't thank you enough. It's got to take a lot of guts to tell your story and put it out there in front of everybody. And I know that's part of the healing process, but I don't think it makes it any easier. So I'm grateful that Impact is participating in the CII and the research team and the person of Bert Royer. I'm grateful that I met Dave Bullard with Oracle, and I'm grateful that we could hook up and produce this webinar. And I'm thankful that Oracle thinks enough of you and the organization to invest time and other humans. One of my favorite sayings is, the more we help others, the more we help ourselves. So Dana, thank you so much for getting on, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for hopping on and listening to my story and learning about peer support.
And again, we will be uploading Dana's presentation and the video of this webinar later on today or early tomorrow morning, so you can share it with your colleagues. And we look forward to seeing you in New Orleans, February 12th through the 15th, 2023, for the premier event in the construction industry, where we'll also tackle these hard questions. So Dana, again, thanks, and everybody be safe and sober.
Thank you.